So there seems to be a bit of misinformation in the Discord here. So I thought I'd try and clarify it best I can. Full disclosure, I haven't had much sleep and my brain is kind of mush. So bear with me if things don't make sense, but I'll try my best to make it make sense. But anyway, Storm was kind of on the money here. Path will do the effect over the block's lifetime. True. Animate track will animate the property of all the notes that have the track at once. Also true. So basically, animate track equals control. No idea what this means. Basically, assigned path animation is replaced with functions. Also have no idea what you mean by this. Basically, I wouldn't use it. It's clunky for me at best. No, 90% of my note mods, probably more, I do with path animations. Path animations are freaking god tier. If you know how to use them and know how to use them well, they're kind of sick. So basically, the difference between the two, you were right. A path animation is an animation that happens along the note's path. It kind of speaks for itself. The note's path being when it first spawns in is time 0, which is all the way back there. When it does the jump right here, this is time 0.25. When it actually gets cut and is on beat, that is 0.5 or halfway through the note's life. And then 1 is when the note dies, all the way back there. Something to note though is that this 0.5 is based off of the player's headset position. It's not based off of the feet or anywhere else in the world. If the player were to walk forward a bit, 0.5 would be here. If the player were to move back, 0.5 would be here. The note kind of like stretches its jump and its position movement based off of that. That's why you see some competitive players standing really close to the menu. It's just to like make the offset and NJS a little bit closer, a little bit slower. Okay, so now that that's out of the way, a animate track event, think of it kind of like a container. So every time you make a new track, it's making a new game object and then assigning that thing to that game object. So if you were to pick up and move that game object, it will pick up and move everything with it. So instead of telling it like waypoints, like, hey, go from this point to this point to this point as you're, making your run to work and the thing goes from here to there to there to there, then all of the notes will kind of follow in a trailing line. If you add a bunch of notes to a track and you say, hey, go here, then here, then here, every single note is going to run and then slide to the side and then slide to here all at once. They're all going to do the exact same thing at the exact same time. There was also another thing I saw here, primarily because I copy and paste _custom events, lol. Custom events is kind of like a big ol' blanket thing. Like, there's a lot of things you can do with custom events. There's, animate track, assign path animation. You can give a thing a parent, assign player to track. Those are all custom events. That's just something, that's just like a category for Noodle where it just kind of puts its custom events. Can't think of a better way to say that. But yeah, let's get into a bit of a demo here. So there's 2 ways of doing a path animation. Anytime you do an animation directly onto the node's custom data itself, that is technically a path animation. That's telling the node, hey, along your life, do this thing at this time, this thing at this time, and then this thing at this time. For simplicity, and this little guide, I've only really used position, scale, and I think dissolve. But for the most part, I'm only going to use position. Another way is assign path animation. It tells it basically at this time, do this thing along this, at this point in your life, be at this point at this time in your life, and then this point at this time in your, it's both are the exact same thing. The custom events has a bit more control, which I'll get into later. So first things first, we got these first set of notes. -5, it'll spawn 5 units to the left, and then halfway through its life, it'll go 2.5 units to the right. And then when it lands at the player just before 0.5, it will be at origin, exactly where it's supposed to be. Then it'll switch to a different animation here, which is scale, where it'll stay exactly at normal size, 1, 1, 1 on XYZ, just before its halfway point in its life. I'm saying halfway point. It is technically the quarter, but I just think of, before you cut the note, or like when you cut the note as the end, 0.5. I just kind of mentally chop everything in half. It's easier to think of. But yeah, so it'll stay at its normal size up until its halfway point. When it hits the 0.25 quarter halfway point thing, it'll double in size and then shrink down to its normal size just before the player hits it at its quote end of life, or 0.5. So quick demo of this. It's a jump right in. So here we see the note spawning in, 5 units to the left, on beat at 0.25, halfway through its life. It'll hit there. Then here we have the scales. The reason why these are happening on beat too is because I set the offset to 2, and then I'm doing everything at 2.5. When you use offsets like 0.3 or like 0.1, it's slightly off time. I don't know if you've noticed with OST maps, but they always use offsets like 0, 0, 1, 2, 5, 0, 5, 1, 2, etc., etc. It's just because the jump animation is actually synced up with the BPM when you use those values. I'm not sure the exact science behind it, but it's definitely something to just mentally think about. Do everything in like quarters, halves, or whatever it's called. You get the idea though. So after this, we jump into the custom events. If you noticed, those notes spawned in pretty normally, and then all of a sudden they jumped into their kind of funny path animation thing. Spawning completely vanilla, and then boom, off they do their thing. That's because they're in a custom event, and I didn't tell the custom event to start doing the thing until beat 38. So they're going to be completely normal, and then exactly on beat 38, it's going to jump straight into this animation here, which is the position change that we saw before. This is really cool because you can flip-flop in between all of these position changes as many times as you want. So I took the same one here. I did a funny little elastic all the way to the side, so it's going to do a little wiggle as it bounces from this thing at 0 time to this thing at 0.5. Then it just kind of flip-flops in between the two values here. So we have it's spawning 5 to the right, and 5 to the left, 5 to the right, and then so on and so forth. And then every 4 beats, it'll bounce in between these two values. That should look a little something like this. Oh, we might. So there's that little wiggle. And then every 4 beats, it switches in between the two path animations. Something else you can do is you can add a duration and a easing to this path animation custom event thing. So on beat 69, I say, hey, position -15, it goes to the left, it does the whatever. I'm actually going to set this to 0, and then yeah, this I'm also going to set to 0. I just wanted to do something simple. So the notes are going to reset to their 0 position, spawn in completely normally on beat 69. On beat 70, they're going to start this event here, which has a bit of a duration. So it's going to transition from this to this over the length of this duration. So it'll go 20 notes or 20 units high and then kind of start to land down, and it'll create this kind of wave looking effect thing. Where is it? I think it's right around here. So you can see that instead of it going and starting all the way up there, it started at this 0 and then went all the way up. If I were to get rid of the duration and the easing here, it would just kind of quickly teleport straight to that top position. Just like that. So having this little transition thing, this is probably the most powerful thing about custom events and path animations, is the smooth transitions from bit to bit. So working with that, we can assign track on notes between red-blue separation. So I assigned a track path animation red, path animation blue from thing to thing. I gave it a little dissolve pattern, so the arrow and note will flicker off, on, throughout the entire thing. And then this is just a set animation. There's no duration or anything on it. And then here I have a position change. So it'll go 15 units to the left at time 0, and then just before it hits the player, it'll go back to its origin spot. But I also have an ease out back, so it kind of does a winding thing. And then that is for the red note. On the blue note, I did the exact same thing, but mirrored it. So when this one spawned in fully hidden, this one is going to spawn in opaque, and then kind of flip-flop in between that. Where this one spawned 15 units to the left, this one's going to spawn 15 units to the right, and they're just going to do, you know, this little dancey dance in between things, right? Should be pretty cute, should be pretty fun. You'll see what's happening. So they got their flicker, and then you can see the position slowly building up to that 15 point as it goes through. It started off kind of small, pretty linear, and then as time went on, it grew a lot more. So starting, slowly builds up, and then with these guys, on to normal, and then slowly they start getting wider and wider. And then what did I do for the next bit? I think this is when we go into track animations, which is what was mentioned here as animate track will animate the property of all the notes that have the track all at once. So I grabbed all of these notes, shoved them onto a single track, shoved that track to the left, or shoved it to the right, then back to the left again, and spun it around, and turned off the notes, and then turned them back on, and then made it through a bunch of flips and shit. I don't fucking know, but you'll see what's happening. Everything moves all at once. If you fade out all the arrows on the notes, they all fade out at once. They all come back at once. If you want to see that again, the button, there it is. So, again, path animation happens along the note's lifetime. It's kind of like a waypoint system, is a good way to think about it. And then animate tracks are, you shove everything into an object and you move that one object around. Kind of like a container, or you put all the notes on a tray, or however you want to try and visualize it. That's what that do. Again, there's two ways to do it. You can do path animations in a custom event, or you can do it directly on the note. Doing it directly on the note is typically what I do, but I'm starting to lean more towards doing it as custom events, because it's probably going to save a lot of space and file size, and also there's a lot more control if you do it this way. Sorry if this video was long. Sorry if it was confusing. I tried my best to explain it, but yeah, here's your... Thanks.